folks, and welcome to another Besides the Norm podcast. My name is Scuba. Monk is also here.
What's happening?
Not very much, mate, to be honest. If I'm going to be fully honest, not very much. Just kidding. We've got a bit of a what the fuck podcast for us. Yeah. We have Sanjeev Kohli on the line. How are you doing, Sanjeev?
I'm good. How are you doing?
We are fantastic.
We're doing very well.
Quite happy that you've happened to join us today.
Well, this is the way it is, isn't it? It's weird. This is the second thing I'm doing today, of three things, all from my front room, all from my laptop. So, as a lazy bastard, this suits me very nicely.
Well, this is one of the, and I hate to big up COVID-19 sometimes, but unfortunately, like one of the
sometimes.
Well, sometimes this has actually been really great for everybody's pretty much at home a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So it's been really easy for a lot of podcasters to do these things.
A lot of people are saying yes more often because they're just doing it anyway.
Well, yeah. I mean, people are more available, but also I think I know from my personal perspective, I'd like to do more stuff, and it's about the geography of it, and you can't always be, you can't be in two places at once. It doesn't matter how much of a celebrity you are. I'm not famous. Maybe David Tennant could be in more than one place. Maybe when you get to A-list, or if you're just Benedict Cumberbatch, but I'm somewhere like F or G. So I can only occupy one space in physical space at any one time. Also, it's interesting you said there, I hate to big up COVID-19. It's a bit like being in, Germany in 1944. Hate to big up Hitler, but, he was never late.
He's a good talker, sort of thing. Yeah.
A very good mimic and lovely to his mother.
I thought we'd start off at Hitler.
Well, sometimes that happens on these podcasts.
Start off with Hitler. It's a good start point, Hitler.
Yeah, definitely. Who do you go for Hitler? That's a weird...
Genuinely, the box set that I'm kind of doing damage to right now is a thing that's been on the go for a while, but it's The Man in the High Tower. I don't know if you've heard of it. But it's based on a book, and it imagines if Hitler had won the Second World War. So it's set in America, and America's been divvied up between the Nazis and the Japanese, and Hitler's still alive in Berlin, and it's fascinating. So I've been getting right into that. It's pretty good. I can recommend it. I mean, I'm a bit late to the party because I think it started 5 years ago, but it's actually good. Saying that though, I only just finished The Sopranos 6 months ago, and that's 20 years old. So.
Oh wow, yeah.
I've seen The Sopranos a few times. That's a really good show.
So are you one of the guys that's done it more than once then? Yeah,
I've done it a couple of times now. Although I tend to skip the psychiatrist.
Well, I was going to say that. There's a common way to do that, and it's like watch the whole thing through, and then once you've seen that, you've seen all the psychologist bits, and it's kind of boring sometimes. You want to see the killings and like the good bits, sort of thing. But
I wonder if they ever put Sopranos. I don't think it's on Netflix. I think I watched it on. It wasn't Netflix, but it'd be good if Netflix could give you the option skip psychiatrist, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean you can skip intro.
Yeah,
so that they've got that feature.
Oh yeah.
So that you can totally do that.
Go straight to go straight to Paulie Walnuts. At any point, I want to see Paulie Walnuts.
Oh, Paulie Walnuts.
Uncle June, who was a revelation. How funny was he? Oh my God! And then he starts singing. You think, God, the guy's got pipes as well. Very good.
They've got a podcast as well with oh God, the guy that played Chris and the guy that played
Yes, yeah.
Pussy.
No, it was the Pussy. It was the other guy. Anyway, they've got a podcast out as well. They've had like Junior on and like a lot of the other guys. That's been great to watch as well. But fuck them.
Yeah. they're not important.
Fuck the Sopranos. they've made no impact on popular culture. Not like Still Game.
Exactly, man. Exactly. That's exactly why.
That's their argument.
So,
by the way, all of the Sopranos cast are massive Still Game fans. Did you know that?
We did see Paul
Riley with
Paul is up, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's obsessed. He's done the tour and all that, and he's met a few of them. And I dare say, look, it was Paul who put out the rumour that Dave Grohl was a Still Game fan, and to this day, I don't know if it's true or not, because Dave Grohl's guitar tech is a Ouija. And so it's possible. Because Scottish folk are they're quite evangelical about Still Game, and they'll hand you a DVD, or they'll say, you need to watch this, you need to watch this. So it could be possible that Dave Grohl's a fan, but I don't know about The Sopranos. I'd like to think the last thing James Gandolfini watched on his deathbed was the last episode of Still Game.
That would have been beautiful. That would have been beautiful, yeah.
That would have been beautiful. Poetic, yeah.
I think
when did he die? Did he see the new series?
I don't think that would have been a few years ago.
He wouldn't have seen. He'd have been one of the camp that only saw the old stuff, because he knows a lot of people that said the new stuff wasn't as good. So Gandolfini would have been old school. He would have seen the new stuff.
Right. Okay. That's unfortunate. I feel like you need to end the story.
What?
I mean, I feel like you can't just end on Still Game there.
Well, unfortunately, James Gandolfini died.
No, he's not got a choice in the matter. But I feel like that's unfortunate for him that he didn't get to see the Still Game.
Yeah.
His biggest regret, apparently, because he knew we were making it, and then he popped his clogs.
Aye,
that's what I'm saying. Poor James Gandolfini. So yeah, we have Sanjeev Kohli on to talk about. Obviously, we'll talk about Still Game, but great to talk about the sort of beginnings of your career. So, could you sort of give us a bit of an introduction onto like what got you into like the worlds of show business?
Well, I always say I didn't choose the path chose me, because I really, really didn't. I had no intention of being in the arts at all. I was one of these really studious guys at school, and I got sent by my parents to, after primary 3, I get sent to a fee-paying school on the other side of town, because there's this big kind of that Indian middle class thing about education. You've got to get a private school education, and you've got to do one of the professions, And so I was pretty bright as a kid, so I didn't have much of a personality, but I was clever. So I get sent to the school, and pretty early on, I convinced myself I wanted to be a doctor. I mean, that wasn't because my parents told me to, but I knew it would please them. And I think I've always been a bit of a people pleaser anyway, so I think I probably preempted that conversation and thought, well, do you know what? Why don't I just be a doctor and everyone's happy? And I know I can get the grade. And so that's what I did. I started a medical degree at Glasgow Uni, but after 2 days, I mean, I'm not exaggerating, it was literally 2 days, I said, I don't want to do this anymore, which is kind of stupid timing, really, because, I'd done all my hires and I'd even taken a year out, so I was old enough to get into medical school. But after 2 days, I thought, why am I doing this? I don't want to do this. And I didn't really have a plan B, so I thought, I'm good at maths, don't judge me. I'm going to do a maths degree, don't judge me. So that's what I did. I did a maths degree with no real game plan. I thought I could become a teacher or could go in academia or whatever. And I did start a post-grad after my degree, but again, I didn't like it. So I came back to Glasgow and I signed on and travelled and kind of thought, okay, do you know what, bite the bullet, you're going to become an accountant or something really quite kind of unfulfilling. And then a friend phoned me up. It was a friend from university. She was a couple of years older than me. She was a family friend as well. She knew my brothers. And she had been on this BBC graduate production trainee scheme, right? So she'd done that for 3 years, and it was a very specific, good scheme. Only 6 people got on it out of about 2,000 applicants, and she was one of them. And her first sort of job after graduating from the scheme was to produce a radio show, and it was for Radio Scotland, and it was going to be a multicultural magazine show. So the idea was it would reflect the different cultures of Scotland. This is going back to 1994. We're talking 27 years ago now. And she was scouting for new presenting talent, because that was part of her remit. Was she wanted to get more different voices on the radio and on the television. So she said, look, do you fancy auditioning for this new thing that I'm doing? And I said, well, I've got absolutely no experience. She said, well, no one that I'm asking has the experience. That's the whole point. We're trying to get new people, try to cast the net a bit wider and not use the obvious faces and voices. So I auditioned to present the show, and I got the job. So I'm suddenly presenting this radio show on Radio Scotland on Sunday nights, and finding that I'm quite good at it and also really enjoying it. And it really wasn't a career kind of path that I thought I would ever be walking on, But I thought, this feels right. This feels good. It felt like I've been doing it for years. And at that point, it was a magazine show, so it was serious and light. So, for example, in the first show that I presented, I was hosting a discussion about war-torn Yugoslavia with 3 people getting really heated about it. And then I'm interviewing an Asian pop star, and then I made this feature about why Gangster Rap was massive in the Southside of Glasgow. So it was, very quite journalistic. And I thought, this feels like a good fit. I could maybe go down the journalistic route. But what ended up happening was that I would then start writing my own scripts. And I had no experience of writing at all, but I was a massive fan of comedy. Just a fan, a consumer, not a performer as such or a writer, but I just loved comedy. I grew up on stuff like the young ones and Fry and Laurie and Absolutely and the Day to Day and the two Ronnies and Kenny Everett and all the rest of it. And I was a bit obsessive about comedy, so I would write my links and I'd put jokes into the links. Now, this was only to make myself laugh and to make my two co-presenters laugh and the two people in the booth laugh, because fucking nobody was listening to this show, right? It was a phone-in show and nobody phoned in.
Right,
so we're in a vacuum. So literally just to make the people in my line of vision laugh, I would just chuck jokes in and so I got a kind of reputation as a funny presenter, and then that led to me getting asked auditioning to present Off the Ball in its very, very original incarnation, which obviously now it's Stuart Cosgrove and Tam Cowan. But back in the day, I auditioned to present the first series. I didn't get it, but Greg Hemphill got the job. So if you listen to the first series, I'm sure you can find it, the first series of Off the Ball, it's Greg Hemphill presenting. Tam Cowan is this regular guest. I'm a regular guest. Another guy, Ian Ross, is a regular guest. And then when they changed the format of that show, I get binned. But they said, look, we're now doing a sketch show. We're doing Off the Ball and On the Ball. One of them is, and I always forget which one was which, one of them is going to be a sketch show. Do you fancy writing sketches? And I'd never written comedy sketches in my life, but I'd watched plenty. So I started writing football sketches. And around about the same time, I got involved with, do you remember Goodness Gracious Me, the Asian sketch show?
Yes.
But yeah, well, what had happened was back in 96, it occurs to me this is a very long answer to your question, but it's all interesting.
Oh, no, it's perfect.
Back in about 96, you're looking for edit points. No, but back in 1996, I had been commissioned to produce a couple of documentaries for Radio 5 Live, and they were doing this season about race and race issues. So one of the things I was quite interested in was Asian stand-up, because I'd heard from a few people down south that there was this burgeoning Asian stand-up scene in places like Leicester, Birmingham, Coventry, East London. And I was quite keen to do a documentary about this, because my experience of growing up, especially as a Punjabi in Scotland, was we had a laugh. We always had a laugh. If you sat around the dinner table with a Punjabi family, it's jokes, it's taking the piss. It's very kind of Scottish in a lot of ways, you know? Yeah. And I thought this is finding a way, and it's filtering into actual performance. So I was quite keen to make a documentary about these new Asian stand-ups who'd all have been mid to late 20s at the time. And I found out, doing my research, that they were planning this new Asian sketch show for Radio 4. And it was, original title was Peter Sellers is Dead, but that didn't carry. So they changed it to Goodness Gracious Me. So I got in touch with the producer and I said to him, look, I'm making this documentary about Asian stand-up. What you're doing isn't stand-up, but it is comedy. And it's very much ploughing the same kind of areas that I want to, investigate. So would you mind awfully if I did an interview with you? He said, oh, that'd be great. It'd be good publicity for the show and blah, blah, blah. And then I said, and I don't suppose you're looking for any sketches. And he said, look, send what you want. I can guarantee I'll read them. I can't guarantee that I'll use them. So for a week, I just wrote millions of Asian sketches and I sent them to him and he used them. So I got stuff on Goodness Gracious Me and I got stuff on Off the Ball. So it's quite weird because I was doing my Scottish football-y stuff and I'm doing my Asian culturally stuff at the same time. So like the two halves of my personality being, bifurcated into these two areas. And then at the same time, Chewing the Fat kicked off. Yeah. So at the same time, I was asked to produce the first series of Chewing the Fat for Radio Scotland. Now, it was a very, very, very different show when it started. Because the whole reason it's called Chewing the Fat, and not everyone remembers this, is that initially it was Ford and Greg actually chatting as themselves and introducing sketches and introducing music. So it was an hour-long show to start with on Radio Scotland, which got truncated to a half hour of just them chatting and introducing sketches, so no music. And then it went to the telly, and it started off them chatting and introducing sketches, and then they ditched the chat that it wasn't working, and it just became the Tune the Fat everyone knows, which is half an hour of sketches. But way back in the beginning, I was producing the original version of the show, and then I got taken on as a writer for Tune the Fat. So again, I'm able to write loads of contemporary Scottish sketches. So that was me. I'm writing for 3 sketch shows, and I can call myself a writer. And really, a couple of years after that, I was writing with a guy, Donnie McCleary. We were kind of a double act writing for various sketch shows, and we'd put an idea into Radio Scotland where we wanted to do a listing show. So basically, there used to be a show on STV. I don't know if you guys remember it. It was called NB, and Brian Burnett and Janice Forsyth used to present it. It was a really good show. The idea was it would tell you, this is the play you should watch this week, this is the film you should watch this week, this is the album you should buy this week. We thought, there's not really a show like that anywhere on the networks in Scotland. And so we said, well, why don't we do a show that does that, but we do it in character? So actually, it's a sketch show dressed as a listing show. So we called it Shredded Week. So Donnie and I would present it as ourselves. It's called Sanj and Donnie Shredded Week. We present it as ourselves. And then we do things, and here's the Soaks roundup with the Emperor from Star Wars. Because Donnie could do a really good Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars. So he'd say, and finally on Hollyoaks, wipe them out. All of them. And we do an arts roundup as two Neds called Alan and Govinda Jeggi. All right? Ladies, this week we've been doing a Tron Theatre to review Our Bad Magnet by Douglas Hodge. And you'd end up reviewing the toilets. We would do, so it was all done in character, but, we'd still like review stuff. So that was kind of my first acting job, really, because it was sort of comedy acting, doing voices and stuff. But that was the first time I'd really not been myself. Like I'd actually tried to be other people, and it was really that was the kind of start of it. So it was completely accidental. I fell into all these things, but I must have been quite good at it because I get asked to do more stuff, and then I kind of just built up a reputation as being a presenter who could sort of do comedy without actually doing stand-up as such.
Well, that's you've become pretty much like, I've watched you like on Twitter for years. Jokes are plenty. Yeah. Like pretty much every single day you've got like a new joke up there.
Yeah, they're not all new jokes, to be fair. I do like I'll tweet a joke, right, and if I think it's been long enough or I think it didn't get enough attention, I'll do it again. But then it's like going to watch Led Zeppelin. If people are going to come and watch Led Zeppelin, they're going to want to hear Stairway to Heaven. They're not going to want to hear the new stuff. And comedians are in this crap position where if they do an old routine, they get slagged for it. Whereas if bands do an old routine, well, that's what the crowd want. It's a really hard one for comedians. They have to keep generating stuff all the time. So I occupy this halfway house where I'll do some new stuff and just do the classics, do the old ones, and hopefully no one's noticed. I think they have, but yeah.
Well, they have certainly.
There's a few comedians now that are actively going into the argument of it's just like music. There's a guy called Nate Bargatze who treats his comedy essentially like an album. So he'll just have this bit instead of this song, and then he'll just do it exactly like an album. It'll be a track list and everything, and he puts it on Spotify and he makes money that way. That's how he's going, and it seems to work quite well. People want to hear the hits, they want to hear the big bit, the good bit.
Yeah,
you'll know yourself as well that watching, like for example, there are certain Kevin Bridges routines that you'll happily watch again and again and again.
Yeah,
and if you were to do it live, you'd think, I actually don't mind if he just does the same thing again because it's so bloody good. He can't really improve on it.
Well,
but I was talking to the stand-up Ed Byrne.
Yeah.
He does some of the best stand-up I've ever heard. But he does this whole thing about Alanis Morissette ironic. Do you know the routine I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
He says, "Aye." So he's basically, for anyone that doesn't know, he's saying it's not ironic to find a knife where there's only spoons. And it's not ironic to be caught in rain on your wedding day. That's just bad luck. That's not irony.
Yeah.
He's saying irony would be if you're caught in traffic and you're a town planner and the town that you were stuck in was a town that you had planned, and the traffic was for an event, and the event was a conference where you were the keynote speaker to talk about town planning. He keeps just like adding layer upon layer upon layer of irony, and it's genius. And I said to Ed, you should just finish every one of your stand-up acts with that, because I would happily watch that. And he said, I know, but, it's just not the done thing. But I think maybe stand-up, especially now that, in the old days with stand-ups, like I'm talking about 70s and 80s, they could do the same routine for 2 years before they would have to renew it, because nothing was getting leaked out of the clubs. Nothing was being filmed. Nothing was being recorded until they made the decision to record a DVD or record a cassette or vinyl or whatever. Then they had to move on. But nowadays, if you did a routine at the stand, someone might film it and put it out straight away, and that you humped.
Yeah.
So it's become much more of a voracious animal. Like it must be difficult for stand-ups to keep generating new material before it gets, siphoned off and viewed, and then it becomes, old hat. So I think they are going to have to change the mindset and say, do you know what? I am going to do some of my rock solid classics in amongst the new stuff and change the mindset of the audience. Maybe, I don't know.
I think there's also an argument among comedians about that as well, because people like Ricky Gervais just seems to just want to do everything new. He never wants to go back and do something that he'd done previously, and I don't know whether that's a response to his audience or whether it's just him not feeling like he's doing his job properly if he doesn't brings completely new material every single time. So there's that sort of argument as well, I think.
Yeah, true. And well, do you know what? If he's got the talent and he's got the the material to do it, then why not? But I suppose with Ricky Gervais as well, I mean, he'll do like a big tour, maybe once every 2-3 years. So he's got a couple of years to write new stuff.
Yeah,
he's obviously writing narrative stuff as well for like for different projects he's doing. In terms of the actual stand-up stuff, he's possibly got a bit more time. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you are stand-up doing the clubs, you're possibly going through more material, at a quicker rate. So if you're in the position of luxury that you can tour when you want, it's like Billy Connolly always said, he'll only tour if he's got something new to say. He's not going to, if you're successful enough, you don't, financially successful enough, you don't have to tour when you don't want to. If you've got nothing new to say, then you can just wait, keep your tinder dry until you have got something new to say, I suppose.
Have you been sort of going to obviously not recently, but beforehand, have you been sort of dipping your toe into stand-up and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, for 25 years I've been thinking that I should do stand-up, and I did it once and that was awful. In fact, I got a written heckle. You can believe that. And this is true. So what happened was, this is going back to the time I was talking about. So I was still a radio presenter, and I was doing a little bit of comparing work. So I am working with an audience occasionally, right? I wouldn't call it stand-up. I would just call it being vaguely witty in front of people and introducing, like comparing events, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. But because my default setting is comedy, I would try to look for the funny. But again, I just wouldn't call it stand-up. I think it's a quantum leap to stand-up from what I was doing. Mm-hmm. But I was writing comedy, I was writing sketches and writing links for shows I was doing. And I thought, well, the logical conclusion to this is you should do stand-up, because you're finding your voice as a performer and you're writing comedy. So surely you should just be able to smush those things together, get on a stage and try and be funny. But I'm a total shite bag. I still am. And so I just didn't do it. And then what happened was, this is going back to 97, this was, a friend of mine approached me, and she basically had, she was a family friend, Asian pal. She had booked the Hilton in Glasgow for this sort of event, like an Asian young professionals event. I think it was just to try and get people married off, right? And so she put this all, it was like a black tie, a 3-course dinner sort of thing, right? And they had a DJ booked, and I think they had a table magician booked, right? That was the entertainment. But she had it in her head, I want a comedian there. And she said, look, I know you're involved with the Goodness Gracious Me guys. Yeah. And I really like Sanjeev Bhaskar, and do you think he might be able to do our event? I said, well, he's on the telly now. You might not be able to afford him, but I can certainly get a contact for you. So I spoke to Sanjeev, and I got his agent's details, and I passed them on to my pal. And she got back to me 2 weeks later, and she said, yeah, you're right, he's too expensive. Do you want to do it? So I thought, well, thanks for the compliment. Sloppy seconds, fine. But also I said yes straight away to force my own hand. So I thought, if I just say yes to this, then I'm forced to write a routine. I'm forced to do this thing, which I've been shouting myself off, for months now. So that's what I did. So I showed up at the Hilton, and this is going back to just before Christmas, 97 to 21 years ago. No, what I'm talking about, 24 years ago, 23 years ago. And I showed up, and no one's expecting a stand-up. I'm not on any of the posters. And also, very few people know who I am at this point, right? I don't have a public profile. I'm just this random guy that they might have seen at a wedding once that decided that he was funny. And so I went up on stage, I got the mic, and do you know what I was doing all right? I'd written a routine that was tailored to that audience, and I know that audience because I was that audience, right? I was an Asian guy in his mid-20s, late 20s, right? And I'm doing all right, and I probably had them in my hand for maybe 7 or 8 minutes, which is, no mean feat. But I started to lose them, and the problem was that I didn't really have an exit strategy. I thought that the DJ on the night was going to give me some kind of visual cue as to when to wind up. He was running back smoking, waiting for me to wind myself up. So long story short, what felt like forever, but was probably only about 20 minutes, I'm up there and I've lost the room. The room is dead to me. I may as well be hermetically sealed from the room in a kind of COVID bubble or something, because they're just literally getting up and walking across and chatting to their pals. And I'm up there just chuntering, possibly reading from a bit of A4 by this point, right?
Oh, no.
They haven't thought you know what I mean? And I'm thinking that I actually don't know how to leave the situation, and it was horrible. And then eventually, a waiter came up with a tray with a wee Bacardi and Coke on it, and I said, "Oh, at least I'm getting some support from someone." And he said, "No, that's just a paperweight. There's a note underneath the drink." And the drink wasn't even for me. It was just a note underneath it. So I opened it up, and it said, "No, didn't you get the drink? No, that's for someone else." And the note said, "You are boring everybody. Please get off." And so I said, "Well, the deal's quite good because it gave me a way out."
Well, yeah.
So and it might have even looked like I planted it as a joke, but anyway, so I said, "Well, I'm sensing hostility, so I'll leave you tonight. My name is Sanjeev Kohli. Good night." And I just walked off, and I hadn't been drinking that night. I walked off past my table of pals who couldn't even look me in the eye, and I went straight into my wee car, and I drove home, and I went to bed for 2 days. I was broken. That was the last time I properly tried stand-up. I've kind of done wee things that approximate to stand-up, like more like, I guess, storytelling and stuff. But that's not to say I'll never do it, but I don't know. Well,
listen, no wonder you're scarred.
Yeah. That's my worst. This is why, well, apart from not being good at writing or anything, that's why I've never done stand-up comedy. Is I've made jokes that have went badly, and you instantly want to die.
So like a house party or someone, you'll say something that just dies.
But the thing is, though, it's all about perspective, right? I mean, I once worked with Richard Blackwood. Unfortunately, he's one of the biggest arseholes I've ever worked with.
Oh.
And really arrogant guy. I mean, it was a time I was working for Channel 4 briefly. I was writing for The Big Breakfast. It was only for 4 weeks. But they had this other project, and it was going to be the show for Richard Blackwood. And it just struck me that he was nearly funny enough and nearly good looking enough to front his own show, but for me, he was neither.
Yeah.
And the thing was, he thought he was the British bloody Eddie Murphy, right?
Yeah.
So I can tell you, he wasn't even the British Richard Blackwood, and he was incredibly self-confident. And I remember the idea was there was 6 or 7 writers, and we would write this routine that he would deliver the Hen and Chickens in Soho in London. And then that would be the basis of a routine he'd do as his opening monologue for his show, right? So the writers all went, and he did this routine, and he didn't go down very well, right?
Yeah.
And he came off and he said, "Well, it's not me that's shit, it's the audience that's shit." And I thought, do you know what? That's a really good attitude to have. Just absolve all responsibility. But to have that, I think you have to have that attitude. Because, and a lot of the time it's true. I mean, I know that I've done... I remember once I did, like I said, I do After Dinner, which I don't think is quite stand-up, but it's kind of nearly stand-up. And I remember once it was very long, 20 minutes. It was like blood out of a stone. They really weren't responding. And I was kind of died a wee bit inside. And I went to phone my missus from the foyer, and a guy came up and he said, mate, by the way, just to say, we were the table that were laughing because we were the table that could hear you. Everyone else couldn't hear you. There was something wrong with the PA.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that obviously in a stand-up venue, that's different. I mean, it's built for performance. But, the point is, if you can get to that stage where you think, if you're bulletproof, I'm great, it's you that's the problem, then you're sorted. And the other thing as well is when I tell stand-ups that story about me dying on my arse that first time, they said, "You're an idiot. That's the gig that we all fear. That's the 4th or 5th gig that you fear when you think you're doing okay and then you plummet.
Yeah.
If you get the bad one out of the way early doors, then you should plow on and use that as your kind of your ground zero." But I never thought of it that way. But the other lesson to learn from that is that about 7 days after that gig, right, I didn't leave my flat. I just felt really shite. And then there was this family it was like a New Year's party, right? And I knew a lot of the people that had been at the Hilton that night were going to be at this party. Right? I thought, God, do I really want to see these people again? I said, you know what? You need to get back on the horse, pull the plaster off, just do it, right? Just go, and you'll meet them all in one, and you'll have a laugh about it, and you can move on, right? So I get in the door, and the first person I see is this arsehole that I know, this kind of half cousin. That said, who told you were funny? I'm like, Christ, you know what, love? I'm going to the kitchen to get something to eat. So I went. I started putting food on my plate, and then this couple came up and they said, "Oh, we saw you all night. We thought you were brilliant. Could you maybe come down and do my brother-in-law's 40th in Birmingham?"
Yeah.
So I thought there were people in the audience that liked me. It's just, if I had the confidence, I could have maybe, done something with that. But it was a good lesson. Obviously, we all know that comedy is subjective. And a lot of the best stand-ups, like for me, someone like Eddie Izzard will leave people cold. I just think he's utter genius, but he will leave a lot of people cold. Whereas you can get other stand-ups that are maybe, I wouldn't say lowest common denominator, because that's sort of an offensive thing to say, but they maybe are a bit broader in their humour.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the guys that are really visionary stand-ups, they're not very broad. So they kind of rely on building their own audience and then knowing that audience will pay money. Something like Stuart Lee.
I was just about to bring that up because we have this constant argument. I love Stuart Lee to bits. I keep watching Stuart Lee, love his stuff. Yeah. But you kind of could miss him.
I mean, every time I've watched Stuart Lee, I laugh.
Yeah, because he is funny.
But I would much rather put on Tom Segura or even watch an old Mitch Hedberg bit. I would rather do that than watch Stuart Lee for some reason. I don't know why.
You're more into like a lot of American comedians, I feel like.
A lot of American comedians, yeah.
There you go. That's it.
Okay. I mean, I only recently discovered Mitch Hedberg. He's very funny. He's very funny.
It's so surreal. Great line. Surrealist stuff.
I know, is it? But he does the one-liners, but that was a great line. I used to do drugs. I still do drugs. Yeah. I also used to do drugs.
That's one of my favorite
bits. I saw Wino with a bunch of grapes. I said, "No, man, you gotta wait." He's genius.
The bit we keep doing to each other is a bit with the escalator.
Yeah.
It can never break. It can only become stairs.
It's the best bit.
Yeah, but the thing is that kind of humour, not everyone gets it. I would call that broad humour.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad that he got the audience he did. I mean, I was a massive fan of Stephen Wright, who I guess was in similar territory comedy-wise. Did you watch Stephen Wright?
I don't think I've heard him.
I put sellotape over my mirrors in case I fall into another dimension. Or what's that? He was the first guy that I saw doing the line. I hadn't realised it was a Chick Murray line, but he did the one about it's a small world, but I wouldn't want to paint it. And he's the first guy that I heard doing that line, and I nearly fell off the chair. Very, very dry, odd-looking guy, but fantastic one-liners. Absolutely fantastic one-liners.
Amazing.
But yeah, Stuart Lee, I think the thing with Stuart Lee is because he plays with the format so much.
Yeah.
So he knows that if he keeps repeating something, and he's talked about this, he says, if I keep repeating something, people are laughing to start with because I'm repeating it.
Yeah.
And then they stop laughing because, he's still repeating it. And then they laugh again because I've really committed to repeating it. And then they're laughing more because they're laughing at themselves, laughing at me repeating something that's so banal. And, so because he really, really fucks with the boundaries.
Like he's not even writing jokes at that point. He's just fucking with you, basically.
He's fucking with the format. He's at the point where he insults his audience and all that. And I personally think he's kind of ahead of the game in that way because he has the bravery to absolutely fuck with the audience and have the confidence to do that. But I know what you mean. It might not be belly laughs, but it makes you. I think it makes your brain laugh more than your belly laugh. But I like all of the stuff. Like the whole spectrum. I mean, I'll happily sit and watch Morecambe and Andre Previn. Do you know what I mean? And I actually think Michael McIntyre gets a hard time. I think he's a very good observational comedian.
Again, actually, and the same like Peter Kay gets a lot of shit as well. But I quite like Peter Kay.
This is kind of the areas where me and you disagree.
Yeah. No, because
I can't get into like Lee Evans or Michael McIntyre. Who's the other guy?
Lee Evans. Lee Evans is one struggle with.
Mickey Flanagan, is it? Or
Oh no, I like Mickey Flanagan. It's a younger guy. It's not Jamie Whitehall and it's not Russell Howard. Russell Kane.
Russell Kane.
I cannot get into Russell Kane either.
Not into him as much.
I don't know.
I have to say, though, I think there's a real cleverness about what Russell Kane does. I mean, I think he's almost like a Trojan horse because he's full of energy and he bounds about and he's quite handsome and all that. And but I think actually there's a lot behind what he says. From what I've seen anyway. Whereas there's other people. I mean, I'm not mad keen on Jack Whitehall, I have to say. But I think Michael McIntyre seems to become this kind of like universal dartboard for other stand-ups.
Yeah.
I see stuff that he does, and I think, do you know what? He did this whole routine about. I do think if you make an original observation, it's part of what humor's meant for, is, that empathy. He did this whole thing about changing his clock when the clock went forward. And he talked about taking this IKEA clock off the wall, and instead of getting an actual stepladder, he got this bar stool, nearly fell off it, and he took the clock off the wall, and it wasn't a proper hook, it was a nail, and blah, blah, blah. I thought, I just fucking did that last week. Everything he just said, I did. And it was the brass balls that you had to say, well, if I found it funny, the world's going to find it funny. Again, it comes down to confidence.
Yeah.
And he really, really sells the jokes. I mean, you can't argue that he doesn't use that, space to really, really sell what he's doing. And I guess it's his energy and his delivery that's part, it's always going to be part of the secret of stand-up. I mean, I think if you look at the confidence that Kevin Bridges prowls that stage with, he's like a panther.
Oh, it's great. It's great.
You know that he's rock solid in his belief in his material. Mm-hmm. And again, I think Kevin is. I mean, I'm lucky enough to sort of know him a wee bit. I think he's a lot cleverer than people give him credit for. I mean, when he does that whole bit about the universe being God having an empty, that's actually a really, really sophisticated concept.
Yeah.
If you just worded that slightly differently, that would be a best-selling book, a self-help book.
Yeah.
I think he's because obviously he's this big guy for Clyde Bank, and he hasn't changed his accent for anyone. And just the way he physicalizes, which I think is brilliant, just the wee subtle things he does. I think he's possibly not as broad as people think he is, but I think he's excellent. He's all the success is well deserved.
Definitely. I want to go back a bit. Sort of near the beginning of your introduction there, you mentioned Gangster Rap in Glasgow and how it was so big. Yes. Could you tell me why Gangster Rap was big in Glasgow at the time?
Well, I found out as a part of that by the package that I did. I think it is just. I found it vaguely hilarious because you had these wee guys from the Shields going stuff, "My nigger, all right, my nigger, how you doing? You doing, my nigger? What are you doing?" And then, but it was more like a class thing. It wasn't just an Asian thing. I mean, they obviously kind of empathized with the whole ethnic minority being victimized sort of thing, right? But I mean, a lot of these guys, they were driving about in their dad's Merc, from the cash and carry, so they weren't exactly doing badly. But they really did find some empathy. And I remember when I was at uni, there was a bunch of guys, and they were the all Asian guys, and they were all dicks. But they used to cut about in LA Raiders jackets and skip caps.
Yeah.
And that was kind of where I sort of got interested. What are they doing that for? Why are they trying to sort of empathize with obviously a quite kind of politically downtrodden group on the other side of the world? I suppose in some ways they felt downtrodden. There was obviously a bit of racism cutting about and stuff, and they just found something visual they could hook onto. So I think that's what it was really. But I remember I very self-importantly at the beginning of this package I said, "This isn't South Central LA. This is the South Side of Glasgow." I was trying to give it the big kind of Chris Morris kind of brass eye thing.
Awesome.
And the thing was is I went very naively, right? I live in the West End. I mean, it's very kind of middle class, right? And I'm pretty white as well. And so I took my wee Vauxhall Astra and I drove to the Shields, Pollock Shields in Glasgow, big Asian community, right? Yeah. I just parked my car in Albert Drive, and there was like a 25-a-side football game going on in the Albert Drive primary school football because it was like school was finished and there was this big massive football game going on. And I just very naively with my glasses and that, I took my microphone and my wee recording pack, and I just randomly just said, "Who here's into gangster rap? Who here likes Snoop? Who here likes Dre? Who likes the NWA? Why do you like NWA?" And I'm interviewing the guys, and the guys, "Because we like what the black guys like, right? We don't like what the white guys like." I was getting some quite good stuff because and then I could just sense the atmosphere turning. They were sort of slagging me off a wee bit because, in as much as I was another brown guy, I was very different from them as bit posh and whatever, and I wandered into their territory, and I could just sense the atmosphere turning a bit, right? And I don't. Maybe there is a journalist in me because I remember thinking you should leave now, right? And so I said, "Oh, thanks, guys. I'll catch you later." Probably not. And I get back into my car, and the back window exploded.
Oh,
no. And someone had fired a rubber bullet at the back of my car.
Jesus!
So I think they did think they were. I think they thought they were wee gangsters. So maybe the link between gangster rap and the Shielders was deeper than I thought. But that was interesting. But I remember thinking I felt like a real journalist then. I felt like Kate Adie. wandering into the Southside of Glasgow.
I love it. I asked just because I thought it'd be funny to ask, but I'm glad I asked to get that story. That was brilliant. Excellent. So, I
guess you said you done production for Chewing the Fat, so I'm guessing that's how you got into the game.
Because a lot of folk don't really know you were actually part of Chewing the Fat.
No. So the way it went was so I produced the first radio show, and then another producer came in when it became a sketch show, but they asked if I'd write for it, and I was very happy to write for it. And I knew Ford and Greg really well. And so Donnie and I, so it's Donnie McCleary, he's the guy I write Bags, Bags and Bags with, so we've been writing together since those days, actually. And so we'd write sketches together. As did Rab and Ian, Robert Florence and Ian Connell, the Burniston boys. Yeah. They were writing sketches as well. So it's quite funny because I say this to Robert and Ian whenever I see them. There was a stage for about 2 years where Donnie and I would come out of meetings and Robert and Ian would be sitting outside, to go into another production meeting, and we'd look each other up and down because they were the younger version of us. Yeah. So they were like, it was like the Serengeti, where I each other up and down. I don't know who the wildebeests were and who the lions were, but brilliant writers and performers, Robert and Ian, and so they would write for Chewing the Fat as well. And in fact, I am in one Chewing the Fat sketch. It was I couldn't tell you what year it was, but it was one of the Christmas specials. And do you remember what do they call those characters? The two old guys. I'm only here for the banter. Those two old guys.
Oh, I can't remember the names, but I remember them.
Aye. So it was them going to an Indian restaurant, and I'm the waiter in the restaurant.
Oh, shit, is that you?
Yeah, that's me in that sketch. A much younger version of me in that sketch. But I used to write the Lonely Shopkeeper for Karen Dunbar.
Nice. Yeah.
The individual fruit trifle and all that. So I've always been obsessed with shops from day one, right? So we used to have one. Donnie and I used to write the Dixon's boys, the ones with the teeth that would try and sell you a guarantee, and see a name over and over again. I actually, one that always comes back to me is Sports Socks. Do you remember the Sports Socks sketch?
Sports Socks are always at you as well.
For £1. Yeah, because what happened was, I was walking up Argyle Street in Glasgow, and I saw a guy selling sports socks. He was standing on a crate, and I remember thinking, imagine he had to go to a bank manager to actually get a loan to do that. How would that go?
You know what?
When
I watched that sketch recently, and I was sitting thinking, I was like, whoever wrote this sketch has sat and thought to themselves, I was like, how fucking funny would that be for have to walk in and get a bank loan for this?
Yeah, but for me, the joke is the bank manager takes it really seriously. He's well, you've got no appreciable overhead. You've got a guy keeping edgy. Sounds like a good plan to me. So that was, I love doing that, and I love the way that Greg does that. Performs it. So that was a joy, right, for Chewing the Fat. And then what happened was, it must have been kind of the last years of Chewing the Fat, but Ford and Greg had approached me and they said, look, we all live in the same area. And there was a shop, the local shop run by an Asian family, right? And there was an older guy that worked there, and he was a bit of a character, right? And Ford, master of accents, and he could do this brilliant Glaswegian accent, as I call it. And he said, look, Sandra, do you think it would be off if I could maybe play an Asian shopkeeper? And I said to him, look, for me, see, now you couldn't do it, right?
No.
I said, for me, it's about authenticity, right? You can do the accent bang on, probably better than me, right? Obviously, the look might be slightly different, but if you want me to keep you right vis-a-vis kind of references or words here and there, I'll help you write it. But I personally don't see a problem with it, because it's not like you're impersonating a whole race of people. You're impersonating that one guy. So I don't have an issue with that. And that's obviously a question that is very relevant now. When you see people like Lee Francis apologising for Bill Select and all the rest of it. I personally think if you're impersonating an individual and you're doing it out of affection or authenticity, I don't have an issue with it. But that's probably a discussion for another day. So anyway, it didn't come to anything. They ended up not doing it in the end. And then after that, the boys approached me again and said, remember we were talking about that Asian shopkeeper character? I said, well, my offer still stands. If you want to help write it, I'm there for you. And he said, no, do you maybe audition to play a shopkeeper in this new thing that we're doing? And I said, aye, go on then. I still wasn't really established as an actor by that point. I still felt like a bit of a Johnny-come-lately. I felt like I was a comedy writer and presenter, but not an actor yet, even though I'd done a couple of wee things. So, and Greg had always said to me, you always found it really funny when I impersonated my dad. So I just basically, I did an audition kind of as a more Ouija-fied version of my dad. But what I did know was that the Glasgow Asian accent, which I've grown up with, had not been properly exploited anywhere, had not been seen by anyone, on television or radio or whatever. And I've been to college, right, with guys, right, taught like this. See, thing is, Sanjeev, right? See, thing is, right, if you fuck with me, I'll get cousins with hockey stick. They'll fuck you right up, man. So I can do the Scottish Asian accent till the cows come home.
Yeah.
So all I need to do was, my dad speaks like this, right? He's that you cheeky bugger. I just need to put a bit more the VG enter to right and do it like this, and then suddenly you have Navid quality, turn authorities, all the best. So I knew I could do that, no bother. And if I could physicalize it like my dad's a turban Sikh, right? So I said, look, if I get this gig, I would like to play it like my dad. So they had turban and beard and all that. The problem was we couldn't make the character Sikh because of the wedding episode, because they drink at a Muslim wedding.
Well,
if you go to, I don't know if either of you, if either, and if either of you have been to a Sikh wedding, it's a fucking brewery. There's booze everywhere. There's a bottle of Jambui and Maduri on every table. So they couldn't make it a Sikh, otherwise I wouldn't have rung through.
Right.
So I see what I can't remember is whether I had already asked for the beard and the turban, and they just lost the turban. So whether the beard was my idea or whether that was already an idea that makeup or Ford and Greg had, I actually can't remember in the midst of time. I'm really, really glad because it kind of gave me something else to hide behind and gave me more distance between me and the character. And it's just always nice to distance yourself from yourself when you're playing other people. Mm-hmm. So that's the genesis of Navid, really.
So one of the questions we kept getting that we initially weren't going to ask because we didn't feel like it works at the end of the podcast, was if you ever got any trouble from Muslims for portraying a Muslim character.
No. I'll be honest, it was a worry because, first of all, I was painfully aware. I always remember there was a Glasgow Asian actor, and my brother told me about him. He said he just got his equity card, right, and he's totally lording it. He's really bigging it up, and he came to this pub and he's waving about his equity card. He said, "This is me. This I've arrived. This is the keys to the kingdom I've got in my hand here." And my brother thought to himself, "Yep, shopkeeper, pharmacist, shopkeeper, pharmacist, shopkeeper, pharmacist," right? And he had to laugh about it. So then I get my big breakout role, and the thing was, Still Game was always going to be a hit because everyone loved Tune the Fat and everyone loved Jack and Victor, right?
Yeah.
So I knew this was going to be a big deal, right? And I'm playing a shopkeeper. Now, personally, no issue with it because number one, I've read it. They've written a really funny character who's nobody's victim. Because if you watch, like, for example, EastEnders, right, when they first introduced Asian characters, they were always getting bricks put through their windows. They were always the victims. I mean, I wanted to write a sketch, for goodness gracious me. They never used it. I don't know why, but it's a family in a soap, an Asian family, and a brick comes through the window with a note around it. And they take the rubber band off and they take the note and it says that we specialize in Asian windows, right? Because it was happening so bloody often, getting their windows panned in. And so, but with Navid, he was the cock of the walk. He was the king of Craig Lang. He's the one with the tan Merc with the private number plates, okay? He's the one that's got the power. So that's quite good. Also, I absolutely recognize that character because, we had a shop. My dad, teacher, my mum, trained social worker. They watched all of their colleagues get promoted. They had their theories as to why that might be. And they thought, to hell with this, we need a bit of control. Yeah. And so they started a news agency in Infections. My mum worked 6 till 6. She was on her feet for 12 hours a day, five years of her life to put us through private school. So for me, that kind of hard work ethic and that gumption and that get up and go is something to be celebrated. And also the fact is we're running the economy through sales of gypsy creams. So I had no problems about. For me, it's a positive stereotype. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So again, no issue for me. I could see the subtlety of it, and also because he was so well written, he didn't feel fictional in a weird way. He felt very, very real, and that's what feedback has been for me. Is he might be the only Asian they know, but he's as good as a real person. And also, I noticed the way they've written it. His religion and his race don't really come up until much later on. Mm-hmm. So we're not saying the first thing he is a Muslim or the first thing he is an Asian or whatever. they talk about, nay drink at a Muslim wedding. That's episode 6. It's not episode 1.
Yeah.
I could see what the boys had done, right? So personally, I was fine with it, but I did worry that either the Muslim community might think that it was somehow negative, or the Asian community would think, oh, fucking shopkeeper, why couldn't he have been, a robber, or why couldn't he have been, a non-stereotype? So I was kind of clenching my arse a wee bit when the first episode went out, and I actually shat it a wee bit going to our local shop, which is run by an Asian family, and I didn't go for a couple of weeks, and I eventually went. I thought I need to broach this, and I went in, and in fact I think it was after. This will tell you exactly when it happened, because when I went in, she looked at me for a while and she said, "Could you do me a favour?" I said, "What?" She said, "Could you run the shop for a while? It's my brother's funeral in India." So she went on to say how much her and her family loved it. So that was, for me, was the validation. And I've honestly not had a bad word said since then. So what I hope is that through Ford and Greg's writing and through what I bring, authenticity-wise, we've come up with something very real. And also, like I say, of course he's flawed, but he's, like I say, nobody's victim. And people seem to, and also kids love him. I mean, I can't tell you how validating it is when you're playing fireside football and you hear someone shout, "Mina!" and you turn around and it's a wee 12-year-old with freckles and ginger hair. And you're like, "Mate, did you just say that?" It really, really warms my heart when the kids really like him. I'd, not long after Still Game had started, actually, it was Halloween, and I went round to my sister-in-law's.
Already love the story.
What's that?
I'm not sure what the story is, but already love the start of it. It's Halloween.
Yeah. And so my wee nephew Harry, he was maybe 8 or 9 at the time, and his pals were all around, and they were dead excited that Navid from Still Game was in the house. And Harry said, "Can we put on a Still Game for you?" I said, "Of course." So they disappeared off to the attic and they wrote this wee sketch, and they came back, and I can't think his name was Blair, and he was the most red-haired one out of a lot of them. He got to be Navid, and apparently they totally fought as to who'd be Navid. And he really went for it, but he really got it wrong. He came out patois. So he said,
"What do you mean?
Here is your chewing gum, and here is your change." And I didn't have the heart to tell him, "Hey, that's from Kingston. That's not from Pollokshield." But it was, I love the gusto that he went with it for, and it was done out of affection.
Definitely.
Because that's the other story I heard was, my mate Al is a massive Celtic fan, and he went to Seville for the UEFA Cup final, the Europa Cup final, the UEFA Cup final. And he said there's a couple of wisecrackers on the plane, as there always are. There are two guys that crack it wise more than anyone else. And they started doing Navid. And he said even 2 years ago, if you'd heard a couple of guys doing it in an accent, it would have been offensive. But they were doing it because they liked him. They were doing it out of affection. So that's obviously a lovely thing to hear. Because on a slightly more serious note, I mean, you're talking about whether Muslims might have been offended. What I think Navid does is he celebrates what we have in common. So, okay, he looks different, he dresses slightly differently and whatever, but he's speaking the same language. And I know with what I can bring to it, I can give it that slight spice, but it's the same language, it's the same everything. We're not focusing on what's different. So instead of demonizing Muslims and Asians, we're humanizing them. And for a long time in drama and comedy, it was all about demonizing people, making them different, and that's where the comedy was. This is much more about including people, and especially with Mina as well. I mean, the stuff she says, she is the most offensive, and I think that's brilliant. I think that's absolutely brilliant that the wee Asian woman is the most offensive member of the cast.
Was that all real language?
Yeah. It would happen. The way it would be that because my Punjabi is terrible, and thankfully I very rarely had to speak Punjabi, although this is a funny story, right? So the only time I had to speak Punjabi was a couple of times do you remember the episode where Jack and Victor, everyone thinks they're gay?
Yeah.
And so they come into the shop, and I'm obviously saying Amina, right, without wanting them to know what I'm saying. I said, "Of course they're puffs. Look at their tashes, okay?" Yeah. So that's given to me in the script, and so it's my job to go and get that translated, right? So I've got to phone my dad. Oh, God. So I said, "Dad, I'm really sorry to do this to you. And I know you paid for me to have a private school education to be a doctor, but I need you to translate this line, Dad. Of course they're puffs. Look at their tashes, right?" And I said, Dad, it has to be puss, not homosexual, not gay. It has to be a deliberately derogatory word for gay, okay? And my dad said, what do you mean, like pufters? I said, yes, Dad, and don't ever say that again. And so I could hear him. He's obviously put his hand on the receiver and he's asking my mum, oh, for fuck's sake.
Just asking the
and then he comes back to me and he's, yeah, do you know what I mean? So how many people are in that room? And then he came back to me and said, well, there are two words for what you are after, but one is the transmitter and one is the receiver. I said, what? There's two different words for the giver and the taker. I'm not aware of this. I said, Dad, just give me a word and let's continue. We'll pretend this conversation never happened. So the Gandu is the word that I used, which is kind of the generic kind of derogatory term for gay, which is the one I used. But the other funny story from that is that so Shamshed, who played Meena, she'd be given her lines in English and she would translate them. And it's kind of a mixture of Urdu and Punjabi, but, people would get it. If you're from Glasgow and you're Asian, you would understand what she was saying. And so she generally got on with it. And occasionally she'd run it past me if it was a word that she didn't quite know translated, right? But my Punjabi's not brilliant, but I'd try and help. Anyway, there was this one day it was the episode where Jack and Victor bought the car and they come into the shop, right? So I'm on set and Shamshed is pacing up and down, slapping her head. She's like in real kind of torment. I think, what's the matter, Shamshed? You're going to do yourself a mischief there. And she's, I can't say this. I can't say the word, right? And what it was Ford and Greg, Jack and Victor talk about the car, and it's the Skoda. And they're picking up the Skoda. And my line is, oh, that's no much a fanny magnet. And then Meena has to say, oh, we know who the real fanny is. So that's the line she has to translate. We know who the real fanny is. Now, the problem with the word fanny is there's no idiomatic translation in Punjabi, because obviously fanny just means idiot or plant or whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But the only word that translate is gynecological. I mean, you would only hear it in a hospital ward or in a restaurant kitchen. It's really offensive. And she said, I can't say the word. I'd be chased. I go to airport. I have to leave country. And so I just said to her, look, I said, just say punani, because that's what Ali G says, and it sounds vaguely Punjabi. So if you watch her episode back, she says punani, and that's awesome. Because it doesn't mean anything. But that's what it is. It's funny. Brilliant. So yeah, it was. If you listen back to what she says, it's all, apart from that one word, it's all genuine.
Amazing. That's incredible. So loads of iconic moments.
Yes.
Do you, like what are the things that get mostly repeated to you, like when you're out in the street and stuff?
Well, I think a lot of people. I remember getting chased in IKEA once. I was at the bit where we actually picking the stuff up with the big trolley, and I saw a guy he was kind of stalking me, and he eventually found me and. He says, oh, mate, listen, I'm really, really sorry. My wife's on the phone. Would you mind calling her a lazy bastard? And I said, well, if you want. I mean, it's a bizarre form of marriage guidance, but yeah, let's go for it. So I get a lot of that. Yeah, where's Meena? I get a lot of that. I used to get a lot of minor objective celebrated shells rifle of pussy fish. I think that was the first series, and it was kind of the most kind of Ouija thing I'd said up to that point. But a lot of people like the single mum stuff, the chocolate stuff.
Yeah.
Jeff Gibbs has shaped up his back, that sort of thing. My personal favourite is, just in terms of the delivery, was when Bobby's got a love interest. It's the lassie does the bingo, or the quiz rather. And I actually really like the way I deliver it. when I say, "Geese el piece, Bobby couldn't get his hole in a bear the fannies." And there's just a beautiful rhythm about it, and all the vowels that I can bend and play with. And the fact is, I totally throw the line away because I'm actually putting something to the tilt as I say it. And it's one of the occasions. I mean, I can genuinely say this, that we go to the audience recording. So the process is that we obviously film it over 6 weeks, and then it gets edited to slightly longer versions of what will go on air. And then they record the laughter track. And the way they do that is, it's not like the old days where they put on fake laughter. They actually, by law, have to record actual laughter. So they would hire a cinema hall. It used to be the Odeon in town, and then it was Bray Head later. And they would mic it up and they would record the laughter as people were watching it. And I remember when I did that line, there was about a minute of laughter and they couldn't hear the next line. So I know for a fact they had to pull that laughter back because it got such a huge laugh. It's a really simple thing, but I just really love doing it.
There was a line.
I think there's something about the laugh as well.
There was a line in one of the later seasons. It was something to do with Sodom and Gomorrah and crisps.
Oh yeah.
All right.
That's right. It's like that's right. Yeah. Great line. Okay. Do you know that way where the way we do it is before we film anything, we do what's called a table read. So all the cast, all the costume, makeup producers, whatever, anyone that needs to be in the room to time it or just to ask questions will sit and the cast will read the lines and the director will read the stage directions and that's the first time we get to read it with the cast, and that's when you get the big laughs and you think to yourself, I cannot wait to say that. I cannot wait to say that, because the problem is that that's the first time that you say it and you get an actual reaction. Yeah. When you're on the floor in the studio and it's 5:45 on a Friday and you're saying this line for the 10th time and you get sweat running down the crack of your arse and the sound guy's annoyed because the plane keeps going overhead and nobody's in a good mood and you think, is this even funny anymore? You just have to remember, no, it is funny. It is funny. Because remember the first time you said it, you got a massive laugh. And that was the beauty of doing the live show, was actually getting instant gratification from a massive room for these lines. I mean, it's a very, very different dynamic from doing a line 9 times and then waiting for the show to go out and waiting to hear the reaction on social media. It's all very, it's been great having social media to gauge reaction, but we didn't have that the first time around. But you certainly got a sense of how popular it was from people shouting stuff on the street. I mean, it was obvious from, I'd say, halfway through series 1 that what the impact it had made, and it's incredibly gratifying. But yeah, in terms of iconic moments, I mean, I find it quite funny that Navid's character sort of evolved in the sense that he started as a bit of a philosopher, but then he became this kind of action hero. So he got to do the 2-footed tackle. He got to do the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest with the water cooler. He got to do the Breaking Bad parody. And that's all lovely stuff. I mean, that was really enjoyable to get to do that kind of heavy lifting. And the funny story with the walking football episode was I'd taken my family to see that at the screening, right? So I'm next to my son Vinny, who's about 11 at the time, and he loves football. And so watching this episode, and I've not been in it, right? I'm not in every episode. There's 2-3 episodes I'm not in at all, right? So we're watching this episode, and there's the walking football, and obviously the team's there, and it's Isa, Jack, Victor, Tam, and Winston. And Tam phones for a substitute. And my son actually said to me, "Who've they phoned? Is it Big Innes?" And I said, "You wait and see, wee man. You wait and see." And then I rocked up and I did the 2-footed tackle. My son had no clue that was going to be me. That was a lovely wee moment. I said, "You wait and see, pal." And just doing that was a laugh. I mean, I literally just jumped on a crash mat with my legs sticking out. And the thing is, I do play football, and anyone that knows me knows that I'm a very low impact player. My arse rarely hits the ground. I stay in my feet in my shite bag. So it was, again, quite good fun to be able to do something I wouldn't normally do. And the amount of respect I got playing football after that, people wouldn't come near me. They're scared that they might get a career ender from Big Navid.
I love it, man. Love it. Okay, so I went through some Facebook groups, some of the Still Game fan groups, so you've got some questions here from a few people. If you're happy to go through some of these. We like to call it the kind of quick fire round, but it never ends up any quick fire.
Rarely quick fire.
Very rarely.
Okay.
So a question here from Andrew Fraser. Did you or any of the other cast members play any good jokes on each other when filming?
Ford, which way around was it? I think there was a scene where, I wish I could remember who was who, but the general kind of convention is if you're drinking whiskey on set, it's apple juice. And there was a scene where he had to keep necking a shot of whiskey. So I think for the first 5 takes, it was apple juice, and then someone did the switcheroo and put real whiskey in it. And that was funny.
Very similar thing.
Greg did the thing.
Oh, sorry.
Greg, say again?
On you go, it's fine.
No, Greg did a thing. It was during one of the live shows. I think it was the second live show. His son had found this stuff online. It's just basically, It's called liquid ass. Okay, it's a wee spray. And do you know this stuff?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you know what I'm talking about. It's like an army vomited in your back garden.
Yeah.
And so he had this, and he brought it to the thing, and he planted the story that he'd heard from the caretaker that there was a body or a pigeon or something stuck in the vent, and he started spraying this stuff about, and you could just see this wave of disgust going across this gym hall. And then he took it. They were doing a kind of press tour to promote the show, and they took it with them. And I'm John Mackay was interviewing them, and they took it into the studio. And I think John Mackay had to kind of keep a straight face because I think he thought that someone had an accident in the studio and had to pile on through. Yeah, so Greg's a bit of a prankster.
Love it.
I love that.
This is from Lisa Docherty. How can you film without laughing, and what's the longest it's taken you to get a scene done?
That's a great question.
I am the expert. I think that's why I'm good at playing Navid, because I can really do deadpan. So I can totally hold my shit together. Ford gets the awful giggles. Ford gets it really, really bad, to the point where he's crying laughing. And I've seen him actually doing that thing of being an old Ford's banging the floor to get out of his system. So it can take a while. Ford and Greg actually set each other off a lot. I'm really good at it, I have to say. I'm trying to think if there's one. It wasn't through laughing, but I remember I had to say a list of things, and I kept getting it wrong. I got it wrong 6 times. And then I got it right the 7th time, but I said, I fucked that up, didn't I? And they said, no. Oh, Jesus. So I even mucked up the one I got right. That seemed to take ages doing that one. But I mean, it is a laugh. It's genuine laugh. The thing is they're all naturally funny people anyway, with or without a script. So it was always a barrel laughs.
Sean Ferrier here. Did wee Justin's ma ever get the shite off his back?
I think I don't remember her buying wet wipes. So I reckon it went.
Still got shite off his back.
You don't know. So I think that what will happen is that the shite will have stayed in his spine or got into his bloodstream, and Justin will probably have died of sepsis. But that wasn't a storyline that they actually pursued. So I don't think that hygiene or dental care were up there on Justin's most priority. And that's not me being judgmental about anyone at all. Yeah. It's just that I know she didn't buy wet wipes that day.
Oh, there you go, Sean. That's for you, my man. Gary Prendergast, what are your thoughts on possibly doing a still game movie? I know, I think Michael said last time it's probably not going to happen. Yeah. Definitely not going to happen. It was his exact words. But,
well, put it this way: when I got the call that we were doing Still Game live, I had a theory that Still Game would come back, because I had this theory. It's like bands getting back together. What generally happens is with bands or with shows is that it starts off where you're not making much money, but you're loving it, and then you hit that sweet spot where it is actually washing its own face and you're still enjoying it. And then it gets to a stage where you're doing really well, but you're not enjoying it anymore because there's too many demands, too many pressures, too many other people. Yeah. And that's the point where bands break up or shows stop. And I think Still Game had got to that point. It was kind of outside pressures that stopped it. So I thought what always happens with bands is after about 2-3 years, they forget the shite and they remember the good stuff. And they're getting people badgering them. Why aren't you still gigging? Why aren't you still making albums? And they eventually just remember the good stuff and come back. So I think Still Game will come back. But I didn't think it would be a live show. That was a complete surprise. So if it were to happen, it wouldn't surprise me, because I think there's certainly the appetite for it. I think it's really down to Ford and Greg. I mean, I think enough people. Literally today, I was walking the dog in the park, and there were guys working on training the Botanic Gardens in the West End of Glasgow, and they were saying to me, "Look, I know you guys died, but could you not come back?" I said, "Maybe I don't know. It's not down to me, but I suppose." Logically, it could happen. There's no reason why we can't go back in the timeline and do a movie. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. That's what Michael said, I'm sure. He said you could possibly do a prequel.
Mm-hmm. A prequel. I still only just look younger than Navid, so they probably only got another 2 years before.
If you were to go down the route of the Hogmanay episode, when the party or something like
that.
From
then, yeah, totally, exactly. So, so it is an option. So, but I wish it was in my control, but it's not.
Mm-hmm. I think Michael also passively said there might be a big tax bill comes in 1 year, and they just
You just thought
we'll just make an error.
We'll just do it anyway. So this is Justin C. Taylor has a few questions here, so we'll see if we can do these quick fire, these ones. Whose decision was it to hide his wife until the last episode?
Well, the reason that we don't see Mina's face, and this is quite interesting, because I had a few years ago a media studies student had got in touch, and she was doing this postgrad about the portrayal of minorities in the media and stuff, right? And she said, "Would it be okay to interview you about your work?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely, because I'm quite interested in that stuff." And so we're talking about Still Game. And then she said, "Now, last question, and it's a bit of a thorny one. Can we address the Mina issue?" I said, "The fuck's a Mina issue?" She said, "Well, why is it that she's not visible? Is that some kind of comment on the invisibility of Asian and or Muslim females in society?"
Jesus.
I said, "No, it really, really isn't." I said, "Number one, who do you think runs that place? Do you think it's Navid? It fucking isn't. It's Mina. Mina runs that shop and she runs that marriage. It's pretty clear that she's the one in control. And she's the one that has the last laugh. You can't tell me that Mina is anyone's victim, right?" And also, the only reason that we don't see her face is it's added comedy. It's a bit of physical comedy. So Ford and Greg are big fans of things like Cheers and Frasier, where you didn't see Maris, you didn't see Norm's wife, and also Home Improvements, where you didn't see the neighbour and the Bat Wilson. And so that's what they want to do with Mina. Just thought it would be a funny added layer of comedy. And then it became, how do we hide her this week? It'll be a newspaper with eye holes in it. It'll be a chop display. It'll be a box of crisps. And it got to a stage where it was like ballet, where I'd be holding a box of crisps and I would turn at exactly the right time just to obscure her face as she walked past shot. So it just became an extra layer of comedy. And they just thought it would be a lovely, lovely time to reveal her face. Would be the last time you ever see Mina. And I got very emotional watching it, I have to say.
So did I.
But unfortunately, I used to wind people up because they'd say to me, "Oh, who played Mina?" And I said, "Well, it's a bit controversial because it's two different actresses. So series 1, 2, and 3, Jennifer Aniston. Series 4, Angelina Jolie. That was incredibly. It was just a bit of a bitch fight. But then that was blown out of the water. But then it was lovely for Shamshed because she'd never been recognised. I mean, I get recognised all the time and it's really nice, but Shamshed never got the kudos for playing Mina. And now she's getting the kudos. So it's nice for her that she actually got some recognition for it.
Well, I've been trying to contact her, so hopefully we'll get her on this at some point as well. That'll be awesome.
She's hilarious. She is hilarious.
So, what was your favourite TV show you remember loving as a wee one?
So many, but I think that the most influential one was The Young Ones. So that came out in 82, 83. I was 12 years old, and it was Rick Mail, Aid Edmondson, Nigel Planer, written by Ben Elton and Rick Mail and Lisa Mayer, and it changed my life. It was, I guess, I used to love watching comedy, things like The Two Ronnies or Morecambe and Wise, but this is the first thing that actually spoke to me as I'm maybe a bit young for it, but it spoke to my generation. And it was so clever, like verbally, so amazing visually, so much slapstick violence. It was cartoony. Yeah. And it was so ambitious as well, and had all the best bands in it. And I became known at school as the Young Ones bore, because I'd run about the playground saying, "Who saw Young Ones last night?" And I'd do lines from the show. And I think it was the first time I properly obsessed with the comedy and would watch them over and over and over and wore out the VHS. So that was possibly the most influential show. And I think, I showed it to my kids recently, and it is dated, but I think it still stands up. I mean, Rick Mail especially, what an utter genius that man was. Legend. Unbelievable.
Would you like... Oh, wait, no, before this. What does he wish his character got to do during the show that he never got to do?
Well, we talked, Jane McCarry and I talked about how obviously there was the kiss they had in New Year, and that's something that was exploited in the live shows, but we never did it on the telly. And I always had, I've said this to Jane, I said there were two scenarios I wanted to play out. One was either that a couple of Neds had glued the shutters down, and me and Isa were stuck in the shop, and then eventually when the police managed to jimmy it back up, they open it and they just see like the shop's been decimated because Navid and Isa have had mad shop sex. So there's crunchy dust everywhere, there's Monster Munch brackets trampled, and they're just lying in a heap. And the other scenario was that they actually Navid and Isa go on a kind of a dirty weekend, like they run off together, but just for a weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of go. And I always imagine the shot of them in Largs or True or something, or Millport. The wind whipping them in the face, and he's got ice cube in his beard, and Isa's like, "It'll never work. You'll need to go back to me now." I know, yes, it was fun while it lasted. You know what I mean? That would have been quite fun. That would have been good.
Awesome.
I mean, that's a common question. I got this multiple times. You got it multiple times about whether Navid did pump Isa.
Mm-hmm. No, it was just a kiss.
Just a kiss.
It was just a kiss. But do you know what really fed into that narrative? It was a complete mistake. So I don't know if you remember. So Navid and Isa have that kiss, right, at New Year. And then, the post-sig that Still Game always has after the credits, that wee bit extra. And she drops the milk. And we both go down to get the milk and our hands brushed. And I says, "I'll get the mop." And I said, "Yes, the mop." And I'm very subtly moving into her, right?
Yeah. And
a lot of people said to me, "Is that what you were doing?" It was the idea was when the camera stopped rolling, you actually moved in and you carried on the kissing. I said, "No, it's just I'm a man of a certain age. I was trying not to fall over. That's all that was me trying not to topple. But it looked like great acting, like I was subtly moving in, but I really, really wasn't. And that's been the beauty of the live show, is being able to go down that road, but then completely leave it for the telly.
See, that's the downside. We've not seen the live show.
That's we.
Have you not?
We missed both of them as well.
Michael told us not to watch the TV one because it's shite.
Aye.
Oh no, it is, because it was never meant to be an hour long, and they've done a really ugly cut of it to fit the hour, and it sounds dreadful.
Right. Michael just said it was shite. That was it.
I know it's an ugly cut, and that's not their fault. They had an hour slot. Yeah. It was never going to fit an hour, so yeah.
This is a great question from Kieran White here. He's just about to buy a convenience store, and he was wondering if you had any Navid advice for him.
Yes, first of all, don't call it Kieran White's, because that's just bad rhyming slang. Yes. My advice would be 2 at the shop at any one time at lunchtime, hands where I can see them, cameras, and an electrical cattle prod. If you can get all those things from Argos.
Definitely.
What about one of the buzzer thingies? The bing bong.
I thought that was a big part
bing
of the show as well.
It's very modern.
Question from Taj Sahota. Do you revert to your character if something frustrates you?
Do I what, sorry?
Do you revert to your character if something frustrates you?
No, but what I did notice about Navid was, and I didn't know I was doing it, but when I play Navid, I do turn into my dad. So as soon as I've got the outfit on, I feel like I should flick a wall to check if it's structural. Dad, I feel like I should kick a tire. When we're doing the whole Maduri thing, and I'm bartering with the boys, 12 pounds, 13, 11, 12, and then I agree, and I do this kind of gesture with my hand, and I didn't know I'd done it, but it's completely my dad. So I think I'll probably turn into my dad, and therefore, by extension, Navid, if I get frustrated. But yeah, good question though.
Finlay Kid here. How has life differed before and after Still Game?
Well, I mean, it's the show that I'll always be remembered for, and I've got no problem with that, because sometimes people say to me, "Oh, you're not a bit bored people talking about the one character on the one show?" I said, "Yeah, but look at the show and look at the character." I'm very, very proud to be part of Still Game. Very, very proud that he's almost universally loved. I've had 4-year-olds and 90-year-olds stop me. I've been to Tea in the Park, and some 4-piece band in skinny jeans have got a selfie taken with me. There's Peter Kay came up to see the show. Of course, I'm proud of it, and I jokingly said it, but I'll happily be buried as Navid. In Navid outfit, and I'll ask all the mourners to chuck out-of-date curly whirlies onto my open top coffin. It's been a real door opener for me. I owe Ford and Greg a lot for giving me the chance. And yeah, like I alluded to before, he might be the only person of colour in your life, right? Even though he's fictional, if you like him, then that can only be a good thing for race relations and perhaps perceiving what you thought was different is actually not different, you know?
Definitely, yeah.
So I've been very so yeah, it's been a game changer for me. I think it's always going to be the highest profile job I've ever done until I become the first Asian X-Man, and I'm working on that. Or I become the first Asian Doctor Who let's face it, is the only fucking doctor on telly that isn't Asian. Then Navid will be the highest profile job for me.
I'm sure.
I think I would love to see that.
They're doing an all Asian Marvel film, seemingly as well, right now.
They aren't, are they?
Aye.
Get my agent.
There you go.
I'm still here. I'll get my agent onto it.
Perfect.
The only problem is that as Asians we're soluble. We can't even go out into the rain, so it'll have to be all indoor stuff.
I've got a question from Victoria Schwa, who asks about the episode in Wireless where you asked for songs in the hospital radio, and whether they were real songs that you knew or whether they were just sort of added in.
I think, if memory serves, I asked for Longa della Scala, which is my mum's favourite.
Right.
I'm pretty sure that's one of the ones I asked for.
Yeah.
That is my mum's favourite song.
Okay.
So that's probably why I said that.
Mm-hmm.
I think I asked for another one, but I think it was genuine as well. The thing is that all that stuff is genuine. Like, I don't know if you remember, there's an episode where Navid and Mina are playing 20 Questions, and it's a Bollywood film. And Ford and Greg had written that whole bit, and it was all stuff I knew. So, they research it, they definitely check. I mean, authenticity is very important in comedy. You've got to get those notes right. You've got to get the references bang on. And if you don't, I mean, I was always very keen to, from my point, to make sure that the reference was right. And Ford and Greg never got it wrong. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question here from Robert Shades. There was a few other people asked like different variants of the same question. Yeah. And we've already kind of spoken about it, but this is a little bit more in-depth. Surely those at the BBC must see that there is scope for Navid to have his own show with other characters from Still Game. Just because Jack and Victor are away doesn't mean the end of these awesome characters.
Well, we always said with a lot of the characters that there was still unexplored avenues. So, for example, Isa's son is mentioned but never seen. And the same with Navid. I mean, his daughter gets married in series 1, and that's the last we see. There was mention of a son and doing a paper round, and that's never referred to again. So clearly, there's a world there that could be exploited. Mm-hmm. And the thing is that I write a sitcom that's entirely based in the corner shop, a thing called Bags, Bags and Bags on Radio 4. So I know it's a world which is full of opportunities. I mean, the way that we write Bags and Bags and Bags is it's like a dry cheers. It's very much a community hub where everyone comes in, and it doesn't matter if you're, you could be anyone. You could be Prince Philip, not right now, he's not too well. But if Prince Philip wants a toffee crisp, he's not going to buy it online. He's going to have to go to a shop or at least send a minion to get it. So my point is that the shop is a great microcosm. And still there's very few places now, apart from pubs, and they're obviously on the last legs, where people actually are able to come together. So in terms of an actual kind of precinct for a sitcom, a shop is ideal. I know this from experience. I've written bloody 60 episodes myself. So I think, it's not down to me, unfortunately, but I think easily Navid could get his own spin-off. Mm-hmm. But what I do wonder is it's a question I ask myself, is he so successful because he sort of parachutes in, does the killer line and fucks off again? Is it because we get him in sort of smaller doses that maybe he's more effective? Is he like an impact sub in football? Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I personally, I think it would work, but it's not down to me, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. So as well as was it Fags, Mags and Bags? Was that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
As well as that, are you still in River City right now as well?
Yeah, we've been filming. We started 2-3 weeks ago. I've only been out for a day. We were lucky to be filming at all. It's all socially distanced, but it's really impacted on our schedules because what they'll tend to do is they'll tend to work with the same 4 or 5 actors for loads because it's almost like they're forming a wee bubble. Yeah. So I've not been used much. So, but I will be. I know I'm out in 2 or 3 weeks or something, and So no, we have been filming and we have been putting out new stuff.
Is it really weird filming there? Because I've watched like some of the Coronation Street clips where they've had to like social distance kissing and sort of like.
It is odd.
It is odd.
It's very odd because so just instinctively when you're doing it, like for example, I have an on-screen relationship with Ellie, Liam McRae's character, and a lot of the time, in order to sell something, you have to hold a hand or you have to do something physical. You know, a lot of the time you're just. I mean, the way they write it is to try and avoid those situations. But sometimes you think this doesn't feel real. Why are you 2 meters away from me when we're having this heart to heart? So they just have to work around it. I mean, it's just there's no two ways about it. We just need to. But it is very, very strange.
Mm-hmm. You would think at this point there's rapid testing.
Yeah, but they still have been told to observe social distancing at all times. Yeah. And I mean, I think they've done okay with it. I think obviously people are very understanding. You know, I don't think people are going to write in. And the other thing that they can do is that so for example, if there's a scene which really, really needs two people to be sat next to each other on a sofa, they can film two halves of the scene and knit it together, and they have done that. But all that means is that I've not done it yet. But say if I had a scene with Leah, they would put a tennis ball where her head is, and I would have to emote to the tennis ball, and then they'd flip the camera, and then she'd do the same to a tennis ball, and then they'd have to sort of edit it together. So it's time consuming, but it is doable.
I love Leah McRae as well, so I'm looking forward to seeing some of that.
Sure, Leah, get her on your show. She's she should have been global by now, and she will be. She's a triple threat. She can do anything from drama to comedy, every step in between, and she can sing. She's amazing, and she will, trust me, she'll be the star of her own sitcom within 5 years.
Right, so let's quickly get her on the podcast.
Well, I'll contact her right after this. Perfect. Well, Sanjeev, honestly, thank you for joining us. This has been amazing.
I've had a shite time.
I can imagine.
You haven't bought me a coffee, a toasty, nothing.
I know, I'm very sorry.
What kind of toasty do you want? I can get you a cheese and ham.
What kind of toasty would you eat?
Oh, it's going to be cold by the time it gets here. If you'd organised this yesterday. I know, it's been good fun, lads. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, man. Hey, listen, again, pleasure's completely all ours, man. That was amazing.
Where are you guys physically, by the way?
Fife.
Oh, right, okay. Whereabouts?
It's a wee shitey town called Kennoway. It's near, it's not far away from St Andrews and stuff. It's not too far away from there.
No. St Andrews isn't too far away from Kennoway. It's that way around.
Idiot, Stephen.
That's the power relationship.
There you go. I'm cutting that out. Fucking idiot.
We're famous for being quite close to Kirkcaldy Sheriff Court, actually. That's about the level of fame we've got.
Aye, there you go. I was on Tune the Fat a few times.
Oh, of course, that's right. I used to write some of the court reports.
Right.
I used to, because it was Jeff Brown used to work at STV at the time, and they used to do these court reports. And the thing was that if anything was ever quoted from the actual court, he'd quote it verbatim. So, for example, the defendant was heard to say, "I was egged out of my tits, Your Honour," and he would genuinely verbatim, and I found this hilarious. So that was where that came from. So I used to write them for Greg.
I think there was one mention.
Why was it Kirkcaldy Sheriff Court?
Well, there was one mention of a Fife Constabulary leaving division. I think there was on Tune the Fat as well. That's very, very close. I
think rightly so. I think it was seen as a bit Weechified, and you know that's always been a problem with Scottish comedy, which is really great when you see Guy Tank Commander, or you see you hear different accents, because it is very Weechi centric in the same way that the media has been very London centric. For Britain and Scotland, it has been very Weechi centric. So I know how fun you Fifers are. You're funny as fuck. So more Fife accents, and I'll happily learn a Fife accent. I'm an agent in a situation. I hang out with Jordan Young wee bit. I try my best, eh? So I can't take it, because that's no Fife, is it, eh?
See, I hate hearing the fucking Fife.
I know, that's wrong. That's so bad. I need a coach. But whenever Jordan says, "I'm raging at a situation," I like that.